I'm just going to click record and go. Action. Through the Mic podcast, episode 1, numero uno. Hello, it's Mike Roven, and this is my podcast. Wow. Yeah, I'm saying that, and this is actually happening. Something I've been wanting to do for a really, really, really long time. I'm really excited to get this started and to see where it goes. And, everybody in the world seems to have a podcast these days. And so I'm really happy and excited to jump in and also have one of my own, though it's something I've been wanting to do and thinking about and have attempted several times over the years. Pardon me if I'm not always looking into the camera, but not always super comfortable yet. So, but this is definitely something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So I'm really excited to get this started. I'm glad that whoever is listening or watching and being part of this the first time through is here, and you're going to be part of a really fun, amazing, incredible journey with me and some of my closest friends and people that I'm, going to meet along the way that will be part of this show or this podcast. And, again, something I've tried to do and I've attempted to do a few times over the years, and it sort of just kind of fizzled out. But for sure, this time, it is going to stick, and we're going to stay with it because I've got some big ideas. I've got some big plans, and I'm really excited to get this thing started. I'm recording today here at Breakwater Studio in South Portland, Maine, with my great friend Matt Perry, who is helping me produce this show today, and it provided this awesome space for me to record. I'm super psyched about it, and I always love being in the studio, and I'm really excited to be back in the studio. For those who don't know me, or maybe hearing this for the first time, or maybe who've only known me for the past, few years, several years, much different part of my life, don't know a lot about me. So, this whole radio thing, this whole being behind the microphone thing is certainly not new to me. I've been behind the microphone pretty much all of my life, from the time I was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, standing on the milk crates with my sister, singing into the microphone, to being in grade school with one of my best friends, Jesse, playing radio, hiding out in his room. I'd be in his closet and he'd be outside in his room, and we'd have microphones and tape recorders, and we would take turns being radio show host and just kind of making fun, silly radio shows. And truly, at that time in my life, I really had no real desire, at least that I was consciously aware of, that I wanted to be behind the microphone professionally. I was just kind of doing it for fun at that point in time. But fast forward a bunch of years, I did end up actually working for professional radio stations, as a lot of you may know and some of you may not. And I spent a good chunk of the first part of my life on the radio, working for radio stations, behind the microphone, producing commercials and voiceovers and all that kind of stuff. And so I have also been a event wedding DJ. And again, just providing background for those of you who may not know me, and even for those who do, just to hear a little bit more of my story again. So since late 90s, have been providing DJ services for weddings, parties, and events and all that good stuff. And of course, requires me to be on the microphone all the time there as well. So, but in my later years of working in radio stations, which I got out of doing in 2014, I remember feeling like, I got to figure out how to do like a radio show on the internet, because this was like, 2004, 2005, somewhere in that ballpark. I started having these thoughts of doing a radio show on the internet. And, if I'd only taken some action on it then, I'd probably be a bajillionaire now, but such is the way. It wasn't time. And but it was something I wanted to do that far back, was to create radio shows online, if you will. But fast forward a few more years from there, went through some crazy life changes, which you'll hear more about, I'm sure, as these shows progress, that got me out of where I was living at the time and really transformed my life in a whole bunch of different ways. And eventually got out of doing professional radio shows. And this was right at the time that sort of like the internet radio station started to become a big thing. And, podcasts started to, trickle in. It was a niche thing. And, but it was starting to grow. And I just remember thinking, God, I got to get into this. This is something that is meant for me. Just, life zigs and zags and goes in all different kinds of directions. And it just wasn't the time for me, I guess. And then I kind of started with that whole, well, everybody else is doing it now. It's not really that exciting or special anymore. And all those who know me well are like, who cares about that? Just go do it. You're meant to do this. And I've always felt, actually, since those earlier days in my life that, or the earlier days in my life, that I was meant to be behind the microphone, but maybe not for, like entertainment purposes where I'm, giving away concert tickets and you want a new car, but to almost be a conduit, if you will, for things to flow through me to those who can hear it, and to deliver messages in some way, shape, or form to other people. And it's something that's sort of like been in the back of my mind, or maybe the back of my spirit or soul, for a while since then. And I've felt it, I've had this calling to do something like this. And so, when you have that kind of desire, you can't, it's hard to ignore. I can't say you can't ignore it. You can, but it's just like knocking on the door all the time, knock, 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 knock. And I am like, okay, I got to let this thing in. And so we're trying it again. And here we are. It's a whole lot later than I would have liked to do this. But maybe this is the time that I'm ready to. And I think this is the time that a lot of people are ready to do this, because the state of the world as we know it is a place now where I think people need to communicate, need to speak, need to hear things and say things and understand things in different ways. Sort of because of this new weird, wild, crazy world that we've been living in since last year with COVID, and sort of all things that surround it, with the world and all the events that have taken place just over the past, year, 2, 3, 4 years. And so, I feel as though there's a big calling right now for people to speak behind a microphone, and, in this format where we can, just do it easily from the comfort of our own home. And so wait no more. I'm in the game. And I've got some really exciting ideas, some really fun ideas I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of people sort of who are in my circle who have become really, really important, valuable people in my life, who have provided me a lot of amazing gifts and have helped me transform and transcend, mentally, physically, spiritually. And this is going to be an opportunity for me to have conversations with them in an arena that you can also benefit from so much of this amazing energy. And I hope that you then will be able to share the energy yourself with others also. So that's kind of the point of what this thing is. Rather than me structuring this thing and planning the hell out of this thing and trying to come up with every last detail, which is typically my way of doing things, and my background as a professional broadcaster, to like have every last minute planned, I decided that I'm just going to kind of jump in the water and go for it, swim and see where we go. And I have some general ideas of what we're going to do, but rather than plan this thing out to the T, I am going to just jump in the water and go. So that's where we are. But week to week or day to day, or however often we do this, I will have my friends, my colleagues, my guests, those who I come across that I feel have valuable stuff to share on this podcast, to talk, to have conversations, and hopefully for you to learn and be part of as well. So I'm really excited about all that. So that's kind of the little background about me. For my first one, I actually wanted to bring on a dear friend of mine whose name is Bill Roberts. Bill and I go back to when I first moved to Maine and was working for the radio stations here. Let me just actually bring Bill on right now. We're Zooming. So hopefully we'll get Bill on this podcast. He's rolling in. There he is. Hey, Bill. How's it going? Hold on a second. I can't hear you. Wait, are you muted? You're probably muted.
Sorry.
There he is.
Hey there, brother. How you doing?
Technology. I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic.
So I was just about to start doing a quick intro, and I was just saying that, you and I met not long after I, came to Maine and was working for radio stations, and you were also working there. And, we became colleagues and friends and have kind of been on this journey together since then. So it just felt fitting that you were my first co-host or guest on this show, because, You and I have attempted this a couple times, but this is stuff we've been talking about for several years now. So it just felt right to have you here the first time through.
Well, much appreciated and honored to be here. It's looking great.
Thank
This
you.
is awesome.
Yeah, right? Setting the bar high. So hopefully we can maintain this level of quality, but
Yeah,
that's all we can try for. But I'm excited
nice.
about this. I was just talking about how, um, this is the time I think and you and I touched on this a little bit earlier, where, it's fitting. I think that even though I've tried this and we've tried this a few times over the years, that it's happening now, because it does really seem like this is the time that, I should just say people, but we need to talk, we need to communicate. And, we're all feeling the need to just have these kind of exchanges.
Absolutely. And also tapping into what the universe has in store for us and the changing of the landscape from the last couple of years and uh, the different roles that we play, where we want to be in our lives.
Right.
There's so many variables and so many different things happening and changing that we really have to stay on top of being where we want to be and
Yeah.
living the lives that we want to live.
Right. Right. And that really requires us to get outside our comfort zone, to do things differently than we really do them, and to really force ourselves outside, the lane, to, change lanes and try to do things differently.
Yeah,
Right. And that's really what I'm doing here. And I'll be honest, I've struggled with a lot of, insecurity. My mind immediately goes to when I'm going to, the thought of recording this podcast and doing this thing, my mind automatically just shifts into this habitual thinking of, what are people going to think? Are people going to like this? Nobody cares what I have to say, and I think that's one of the things that's really prevented me from, moving forward with this stuff in the past. And that's a really big hurdle to get through. Even now, with feeling the level of confidence that I feel with doing the show, even to the days leading up to this, my mind starts to talk me out of doing it for one
right.
reason or another.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Well, I can tell you, I was with my mother when we talked the other day, and so she heard some of the conversation that we were having about what you're looking to do with this, and when we hung up, I was very excited because I'm like, he's realizing that his voice does mean a lot to people,
Hmm.
and I think you've been the supporting uh, part for a lot of people to speak. But what I've learned, just in us becoming friends, your perspective is vital and critical for a lot of people. I mentioned how it helped me. You've been expressing how important it is to meditate, and for me, meditating was running.
Yeah.
And that was my place to go. But realizing that if you want to make some positive change, then you have to change the story
Hmm.
that you tell yourself of who
Right.
you think you are. And it occurred to me that, I mean, all these years you were trying to get me to that point, and I finally got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of that. But I'm glad that you're daring to lead with this and putting this together, because I think a lot more people are going to benefit than you may be able to picture
Yeah.
right
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I've finally reached that level of confidence to know that, I have had a positive impact on other people's lives, and what I say, matters.
now. Yeah.
And that really has been a really difficult thing for me over time. And now I can see it, with my own family, my own kids. And, I also want to be able to set that example to say, you really do just have to, push yourself. You really, really have to push yourself. Because, that, your brain just gets in the way sometimes and talks you out of being who you really, want to be and know you can be.
If you don't mind, I really have to. I got to reach for a book that I'm reading right now that
Yeah.
talks specifically about that. Um, uh, the book is "What to Say When You're Talking to Yourself"
Okay.
by Shad Helmstetter. I can tell you, when I was growing up, I had some difficult circumstances, but I was fortunate to be like a really good athlete and did some amazing things when I was younger. And some of my coaches would be like, "How is it that you can do this? How can you?" You know, there were times where when I'd go home, my house would be like destroyed
Hmm.
from an alcoholic stepfather,
Mm.
And but I was one of the top athletes in the school, and my coaches were like, "How are you doing that?" And I didn't know. I just wanted to be as good as I could. But there was a book that I found later on that explained it to me, and it was written by this author,
Hmm.
Shad Helmstetter.
Okay.
And what he said back then is, what you say to yourself naturally when things are falling apart is key to actually getting through those situations. So if you've got a bad circumstance or things are happening, and in your mind you're saying, "I'm done, I can't handle this," then that's going to take you in a different place than if you say, "This doesn't define me. This isn't who I am. This
Right.
is only temporary." So this book talks about, it starts off by saying that, well, we're conditioned for negative thoughts. We're conditioned for uh, 77% of everything that we heard while we were young was negative. It
Hmm.
was, how many times have we said no? How
Right.
many times were we told that you can't do this? You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Hmm.
And then that actually forms our construct of who we think we are. So
True.
so I mean, the beginning of this book has blown me away. I'm on chapter 7 now, and he's just talking about, you know, it starts with our self-talk, which is just what you were alluding to, is, what I
Yep.
say to myself is very important. And so changing that self-talk and making it positive is critical. And that's another part where the meditation comes in, because you can change that conditioning or that self story that of who we think we are.
Yeah.
I like,
Yep.
we may think that I'm a child or of an alcoholic parent, or, you know what I mean? And that's who I am, but it really isn't, as we're not as much of a prisoner as a lot of people tend to be. And that actually kind of launches into a little bit of something that we're dealing with now, which is, okay, our kids, and
Right.
how are they dealing with this lockdown, and how are they dealing with school, with the
Hmm.
lack of social connection, you know
Yep.
um,
Yep.
it's my daughter has been having some significant issues when it comes to anxiety.
Yeah.
And so in speaking with the counselors, they're like, you wouldn't believe how much this has exploded.
Sure.
It's all we do now is help kids with anxiety, and
Yeah.
they're only going to school 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
Pretty
Yep.
soon they're planning over here to actually go 5 days a week starting next week.
Hmm.
And I can tell you, my daughter is not going to respond to that, though we've been trying to prepare for that.
Right. Right.
And in that, we have conversations of, you know, you got to tell yourself that positive story, not the negative one.
Right. This doesn't define who you are. And it's interesting because I think that that could be overlooked in some ways if we're not reaching out for the right support,
Yeah.
because we're also focused on the health aspects of this that, like you say, it's a really good point to think about the, what this can do to how this sort of solidifies our self-talk,
Right.
what kids and even adults are experiencing now, and how this, creates our inner dialogue, you know.
Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really really important to be mindful of that, and you're right. Meditation, number one, and whatever you can do to help separate yourself from that self-talk is critical, you know. It-
Imagine,
yeah.
yeah, imagine the self-talk of someone who's in solitary confinement,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And then we look at the restrictions and the shutdown that our kids have experienced.
Right.
It's not completely solitary, but what they need to develop that is actually play,
Yeah.
unrestricted play.
Right.
And so, and I actually still have to ask my daughter this, because she mentioned that during recess, of course, socially distant at
Hmm.
recess, masks on. Um, and she told me that a lot of kids stay in because they have to do their work that they haven't completed. So they don't get to have recess. But this is a time when they need recess more than ever.
Oh, sure.
They
Yeah.
need to get out and have, because they're testing things and developing.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
mess right now.
Yeah. That's all part of the fabric of who they are, and helps to develop who they will become.
Yeah.
And so, really important now that we teach our kids about meditation, really difficult. But even if we can manage to do a family meditation, before bed at night, rather than watching a TV or two TV shows, just do one and then take 10 minutes and just try to do some breathing or, some meditation together as a group. I know it's hard for kids, but it doesn't matter really what it sounds like. Even if you're laughing the whole way through it, it's just the act of doing it. And
Yeah.
over time practice, just like getting better at playing soccer or baseball or dance. It's the same thing with meditation.
That would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
It would help out in a lot of areas that the kids go through and the schools go through. I've sat down with principals and vice principals who are kind of the hammer of the school, and they're trying to figure out how do we deal with a lot of these behaviors. And we've delved into anti-bullying,
Yeah.
and changing those behaviors. And it's I think a key thing is actually trying to figure if this can be figured out. I think that we would move ahead tremendously, which is to somehow start the day with 5 or 10 minutes of just you know
Yeah.
shutting the
Quiet.
mind down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then because a lot of these kids they're they get up, they're rushed by the parents, or breakfast, get ready for school, don't miss the bus, there's
Yeah.
the hustle and the bustle, and then they're going by their stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're going by, this is who I am, this is what I am. But quieting the mind down helps people disassociate from the running story of the past,
Right.
but it's not necessarily the story of the present,
Right.
which can change their future.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's why it's critical. And I think in this podcast, and it's a huge priority for me. And as part of this podcast, I'd like to really continue to hammer down the importance of meditation. And it's going to be
Hmm.
maybe almost to the aggravation of anyone who's listening or watching, but I'm just going to keep saying it and repeating it because of how important and critical it is. And I know that I made some really, really hard choices in my life, made some really significant changes that required a tremendous amount of strength and perseverance and bravery. And I feel very confident that I would have not have been able to see myself through those. And if I could, certainly not as healthfully, if not for meditation. I am so glad that I learned of it, I think in 2010 or 11, and began a regular meditation practice then, because without that, I definitely would not be here. I can say that confidently.
Hmm.
I don't know where I would be. I'd probably still be back there. And so maybe I can't say for sure, but I really feel confident that meditation is really what helped me, like you say, separate myself from that inner dialogue that kept talking myself out of making the changes that I felt I needed to make.
Right. Yeah. And
So
we tend to, we knew each other when both of us were kind of in the battle of, winning at our jobs,
yeah.
winning as parents,
Hmm.
winning with our family. But really, the question that came out was, for once, winning for ourselves.
Right.
We were doing things more for, and I don't want to speak for you completely, but doing things more for other people than for ourselves.
Yeah.
Sweeping other people's. I've been told, Bill, you'd rather sweep someone else's porch than your own.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm if anyone is moving, I'm the guy to call, because
Right.
you
You're
know
right
what I
there to
mean.
help. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'll help.
Yeah.
But a very important lesson for I think for us to learn was to, okay, what is some of the self-care that we need to do
Yeah.
so that we can actually be happy.
Right.
We
Right.
do want to support other people who are around us, but we need to be happy too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Absolutely. Right. And that's
And
critical. And it's a really good point too, because a lot of that too is what's led me here to be here today doing this again, officially, formally. I'm putting all the previous attempts away. This is
yeah,
like the first time. But I got to thinking, and I've been thinking that is exactly what you just said, and it's a good thing, but I personally dedicate a lot of my time and energy to sweeping other people's porches,
Hmm.
which is fine. I'm happy to, that that's a part of my life, but I realize that the time I spend sweeping my own is minuscule. And so, I need to dedicate more time to that. I want to. And so that's why I will continue to carve this time out, because this is about sweeping my own porch and, just
Nice.
having a slice of the pie for me. Because like you, I would always say, well, here, everyone else, you guys can all have the pie. I'll just take some crumbs if they're left over.
Right.
And I do think, in all due respect to, my folks, I do think a lot of that some of it's, they're hereditary, or like you'd said before, just what you're told, what you see, what influences you growing up. That sort of just becomes your habitual thinking, and that's sort
Right.
of what your inner dialogue just constantly is reflecting back on.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to define who you are now and who will be going forward.
Right.
So
Right.
that is definitely a huge piece of me being here. And I'm really glad you said that, because that really is a lot of this podcast. I really, what helped me, I think, continue to move forward with this was to think this isn't about, like when I was doing radio formerly, this isn't about doing a show for other people to hear, even though of course that's a huge part of this. This is about doing something for me. This really is for me.
Yeah.
And, yes, of course I want others to benefit from it, but at the end of the day, this is just me clearing some space for myself.
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect marriage, Mike. And knowing you, I think you're going to find a lot of people around you are like going to be so happy that you're doing this. It's a perfect marriage of the technical skills that you have, and we touched upon this a little bit earlier today, but which is where a lot of your energy was going. And some
Oop. I think I lost you. uh, I'm just going to pause. All right, there we go.
yeah, you froze up for a second.
Such is the way of life in 2020 21, is unstable internet connections. So
Okay.
see if it sticks this time. Good old internet.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we're back for now.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where that went out, but basically what I was saying was that, this is like the perfect marriage of your technical skills and the roles that you played before, and your interest in helping people finding happiness and, connecting with, what's happening, what the universe has in store for them potentially,
Yeah.
and just living well. It's, so I think what you're going to find, Mike, is a lot of people are going to be so thrilled that you're doing this, and it's kind of like, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. I hope so. I do. And I'm excited about that part of it, and that'll be, I think, a big learning part for me in this whole thing, is to just have that confidence, and not talk myself out of it or think nobody cares, and so I think some of that'll be part of my growth in this whole process too,
Awesome.
so yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Um, this certainly will not
Happy
be
to
the
do so.
last time. We'll definitely do this regularly.
Yeah, sounds great.
So
Sounds great.
it'd be cool to touch on too. Some of the work you've done, over the years with advocating for anti-bullying campaigns and trying to bring that into people's lives and schools and awareness more often. So that's definitely something that I'd love to talk more about as time goes on.
Yeah, happy to do that, especially with the landscape changing as it has for the kids. It's important that we answer some questions uh, that'll benefit them in their development.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now
So
more than
important.
ever. Yeah, absolutely. So awesome.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Bill. Send my best to the fam.
Will do. You as well. And
And
we'll talk again soon.
all right, sounds great.
All right. Take care, man.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, awesome. Well, that was great. Awesome to have Bill here. Bill's been a big part of my life since, I think, right around 2012, 2013. And, as you heard him alluding to, we kind of went through a lot of the same life stuff together, going through job changes, marriage, divorce, changes, all kinds of crazy things. And so, we kind of have been spiritual compadres, if that's the right word to use, through this. So it's great to have him on board. And as I was saying, he's done a lot of really cool advocacy for anti-bullying, just in the world and specifically in schools. And so will be cool to hear more about that as time goes on. So I think this has been a really, really cool start. And, I'll have more guests on the show. So if you're my close, some of my friends who are here and part of this, just know I'll be reaching out to you very soon. And I'm really excited to bring some of their, wisdom and insight and enlightenment to you. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I really appreciate you being here with me today for this first very episode of Through the Mic. That's what we're calling it, because, it feels fitting, because even though this is about me or at least for me, this is also, like I was saying before about, being a conduit for information or whatever it is, flowing through me. And so through the mic here and through the mic here to you. And I think before I wrap this thing up, I do want to just circle back to the topic of meditation, because it came up, as Bill and I were chatting, and I mentioned that this will be something that I discuss often because of how huge of part of my life that it is, and how critical it's been for me. Someone who's sort of, worked through a lot of, self-doubt, insecurities, and, just trying to find, who I am and be okay with that. As I said before, meditation has been not just important, but maybe the most important thing for me. And I strongly believe, and as you get to know me more, if you don't already, you'll know that I'm not an incredibly seriously opinionated person. I definitely have sort of like a live and let live mentality. I'm fine with what you believe and feel that everyone should have the right to do that. And I don't often push my beliefs on others, but I do push my belief about meditation on others. And I don't care who you are, what you do for a living, how tough you are, how aggressive you are, how athletic you are. Meditation is something that applies to every single person, everyone. And I can't say that enough. There's nothing you could say or do that could convince me otherwise. And so if you get anything out of the show, if nothing else, take 10 minutes, 15 minutes out of your day. Tonight, tomorrow, when you wake up, during your work day, take a lunch break, go sit in your car, and just take 15 minutes and just sit there and breathe, and put a little white noise on if you have a sound machine, or find a guided meditation on YouTube that you like. And it doesn't even matter what they say. It's just something to have on in the background, and focus on, or try to practice, recalling yourself back to your breathing. So of course your mind is going to be going 1,000 different directions. That's the whole point of it. And then just every so often, whenever you can, just back to, breathe in, breathe out. Just think about that gently in your mind. And when your mind wanders off to all the different 1,000 places, try to grab it and breathe in, breathe out, and just do that for 10 minutes every day. And you watch your life change in the ways that you want it to. Whether that means being more patient, more caring, taking some leaps or some steps that you've been wanting to do, whatever the case is, try that. Even after the course of a couple days, I would be willing to put money on the table that you'll see an improvement in your life in more ways than one. And everyone says, I can't do it. It's not for me. It's for everyone. Believe me, it is. And so there's my tip for the day. It'll probably be my tip every day. But take some time today and do that. I've done meditation already this afternoon before I came here. So, I'll do it again tomorrow. And it's something that, like taking your vitamins, it's that important. So, all right, that's going to wrap up Through the Mic, episode 1 podcast. I look forward to the next time around, bringing more people into the show. Thank you so much for joining me and for being patient and for understanding this is the first time. So, it's a little rough around the edges, but it will continue to grow and evolve time after time. So, have a great day. Take great care of yourselves, and we'll talk soon. Peace.